When I was a child, I was fascinated with the stories of the miracles that Jesus performed. And today, the airwaves is full of individuals who talk about miracles. Expect a miracle, they say. Yeah. Claim your miracle. Have faith and believe, and your miracle will happen. There's also a song that introduced a religious program, and I've not heard it for a while, but it went like this: the God of miracles is moving through the land. It has become commonplace today to refer to things happening to someone as it's a miracle, they say. Right? For example, God would find a parking spot for someone who's taking a sick child to the doctor. Or, and I like this one, someone would just suddenly find their fountain pen. Now, most of the younger ones don't know what a fountain pen is, but they have lost their fountain pen for all these months, and suddenly the fountain pen reappeared. People would have tumors shrink the day before surgery. Okay. So let me be clear. I'm not skeptical about miracles. Miracles do happen. God still works wonders. But he's not a genie in a bottle. Neither is he a vending machine where you put in a prayer and out comes your miracle. As a child, I was impressed with Jesus walking on water. And with Peter too. Now, I'm from a country where it's just surrounded by water, the seawater all around. And it was common to go to the sea and bathe and so on. As a child, you believe a lot of the miracles, and you take them literally. And you hear the story of Jesus walking on water, and you go to the sea and you put your foot down and you are not walking. You sink to the bottom. Now I've tried a lot of the different things that I learned about in the Bible that Jesus did or that happened. For instance, one of them was the salt of the earth, in which I went and picked up the salt, and when I put it in my mouth, I can still taste the bitterness of the salt until today. So it's the way children think. We tend to be literal when we're little. However, I never did walk on water. And I never did learn to fly. The only way most of us will fly is through an airplane. And I don't always understand everything. Even the answer to prayers tend to confuse me at times. We would pray for healing, and healing don't come. Okay? Because you notice that Christians still die. Sometimes they die in horrible fashion. Christians still get sick. They lose their jobs. They encounter difficulties, one sort or another. And in spite of all of the prayers, there is no miracle. So where is God then? Where is God when you really need him to work a miracle? And why doesn't he answer our prayers the way that we want him to? I believe that a lot of our disappointment stems from our misunderstanding of the nature and purpose of miracles in the Christian's life. Jesus never promised that all will go well with us in this world because we trust him. But he did say in John 16:33, I have told you all this, so that in trusting me you will be unshakable and assured, deeply at peace, In this godless world, you will continue to experience difficulties. But take heart. I've conquered the world. The Bible states the gift of miracles will be manifested in the last days. It is given to the church, but not everyone will be healed. Not everyone will receive a reprieve of restoration through miracle. Becoming a Christian does not put you in line to receive miracles one after another. And your life may not suddenly improve in terms of the financial gains that you have heard so many Christian preachers preach. In searching the scriptures, I have found that the Bible writers recorded only 36 miracles that Jesus did during 3.5 years. Now, there are probably a lot more because John ended his Gospels by saying that there are so many other things that Jesus did. The which, if they should be written, everyone, I suppose that even the whole world could not contain the books that should be written. But those 36 were chosen because the Bible downplays miracles. Maybe because they are not a part of our everyday life. They are just what they are, miracles. Okay. Often we found that Jesus performed a miracle. And when he did, he would ask the recipients to say nothing to anyone. That was a difficult request because the recipients knew of their good fortune, and it is hard to keep it quiet. They would publish it abroad. Just how you get to keep quiet when someone was healed who was possessed of 7 devils or legions of demons was hard to understand. But Jesus knew that they would not be quiet. See? And with someone like Peter around, do you think it would be quiet? No. When he restored the life of a 12-year-old girl, he charged them, keep things quiet. And I did note that Jesus never refused a request for healing. But he was not one who would demonstrate his power for the crowd just to impress them. I'm sure that many of you have seen the excitement created by so many so-called faith healers. They would engage in ostentatious display. And I'm thinking of this one in particular who would have the people come up on stage and then suddenly he'll take his coat and knock them back. You know what I'm talking about, right? Jesus recognized that excitement generated by miracles did not necessarily convert into life-changing faith. Miracles, signs, and wonders act as advertising. A cured demonic, an unknown spoken tongue, a rattlesnake held in the hand. These kinds of supernatural events cause the masses to stand up and take note. Heads snapped around to see things we don't see every day. Miracles and signs and wonders are conclusive evidence that God is working, but they are evidence that something exceptional is going on. Of course, there are those whose religious life consists of one miracle after another. And sometimes you wish your life would be like theirs. There are others who have become skeptics, though, especially when they ask for their miracle and the miracle don't come. And they would exclaim, I don't believe in miracles. I don't know how many of you know the story of the fox and the grapes, where the grapes looked good and the fox tried to get it, but he couldn't. And after a while, he just quit and said, those grapes are sour anyway. I didn't want it. Okay. Now, the Smithsonian Institute has on display the Bible of Thomas Jefferson. Now, what's so unique about that? Because they have a lot of things on display. Well, Thomas Jefferson took his Bible, cut out all of the verses that deals with miracles, and kept only all of the verses dealing with Jesus' teachings. To him, the Bible was more palatable. Jesus as the teacher, rather than Jesus, the miracle worker. But Thomas Jefferson was only doing what others before him had done. In Jesus' day, there were those who followed him, pondered his teachings, scrutinized his miracles. Sometimes they denied the plain evidence that was in front of them. Sometimes they tried to explain it away, even to the point of appearing silly with explanations such as, he is casting out Satan by Satan. See, really, did people find it necessary to believe in miracles, except the ones who received the miracles themselves? And in the first century, as it is today, miracles were viewed as being peculiar. Then, as it is now, miracles arouse suspicion, contempt, and occasionally it engenders faith. But you know, I've made some decisions about these things, these miracles. I've decided that the Bible provides the answer to all of the problems and questions that we have in life. And furthermore, if I accept Jesus Christ as the Son of God in human flesh, who left heaven and pitched his tent to live amongst us, then I must of necessity accept the miracles he performed as a complement to his work. As I looked at the miracles, I'm also fascinated with the results that come from miracles. Some were performed with just a few words, and others with extended conversation. John tells us of one such miracle in John chapter 9. And the story could easily begin this way. Why me? Why did God let this happen to me? You see, in Jesus' day, just as it is in ours, they believed that misfortunes and tragedy strike only those who deserve it. These days, we blame God for the cataclysmic as well as the trivial. Okay. Did you ever notice in a homeowner's insurance policy that there are exclusions? No, you didn't take time to read all of it, right? But there are. And one such exclusion is termed acts of God. Okay. During the 1994 Winter Olympics, speed skater Dan Johnson, and I remember this occasion, he scraped on the ice in the 500 meter. He was just about ready to win, and he scraped on the ice, and he lost. And his wife, who was looking and was ready to cheer when she saw what happened, she exclaimed, "Why, God? You can't be so cruel." Now, exactly what God had to do with Dan Johnson losing 500 meters, I don't know. But it serves to illustrate our proverbial proclamation, why God when things happen to us. So let's get back to our story. The Pharisees taught There is no death without sin, and there is no suffering without iniquity. They saw the hand of God as a punishment in natural disasters. They saw the hand of God as a punishment for birth defects. They saw the hand of God as a punishment for physical disabilities and blindness. Ellen White states that it was generally believed by the Jews that sin is punishment in this life. These days we do the same thing. One Christian conservative stated that AIDS was God's punishment on America for being so humanistic, irreligious, and immoral. Never mind that AIDS is an epidemic worldwide. Another recently stated that 9/11 incident is God's punishment on a godless society. And some years ago, you've been in Orlando long enough, some years ago, several tornadoes blew through, causing significant damage. And yet another religious leader visited and stated that it was God's punishment on Orlando and Disney World for their godlessness. Here's the question of the hour. Teacher, who did sin? This man or his parents that he was born blind? The question seemed to imply that the man might have sinned in his mother's womb. That would be implausible, don't you think? You know, a better explanation would have been that his parents had sinned, and this man was being punished by God for his parents sinning. Does that make sense to you also? Yeah. But Jesus responded by refuting that a man's life is not necessarily related, that what happens to a man is not necessarily related to any prior sin. Neither does tragedy happen to those who deserve it. The Pharisees saw man's sickness as a you deserve it. Jesus wanted the sick, the disabled, and the sinner to know that they were loved. They were not cursed by God. Just because things don't seem to go the way you want it does not mean that God does not care. He does. And he wants you to know that he does. Jesus responded to his disciples, neither did this man sin, nor his parents. But this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. See, the disciples were looking backwards. Jesus sought to direct their attention forward. But it's interesting to see how the healing of a man born blind moved from a tragic tale of physical blindness to one of spiritual blindness. Imagine having neighbors who knew you when you had a disability, but now they are skeptical after you have been cured. Imagine having to prove who you are to those who in times past used to practice benevolence towards you. Imagine your family being threatened and discredited because of this supposed miracle. See, the evidence was there, but they did not believe it. Discredit the miracle worker, they say, and we can sleep soundly because, we're doing God's work. and he didn't come to us, so it's not a miracle. But the blind man was undeterred, and we read it this morning. His neighbors and those who formerly had seen him begging asked, "Is this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claim that he was. Others say, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man." And then they said, "How then were your eyes open?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made some mud, put it on my eyes. He told me to go wash it in the pool of Siloam. So I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked. "I don't know," he replied. See, sometimes we find it hard to believe that religious people would be so skeptical of the manifestation of the supernatural in their midst. Well, we shouldn't. I have found that social scientists have had a field day studying the behavior of religious people. They have discovered that religious people most often take on religion as a personality. They were skeptical, prejudicial, and more close-minded than non-religious people. I was shocked. And not only that, but these people, religious people, tend to despair more about the future and display pathological symptoms more than any other group. These religious people were also inflexible and more hard-hearted than any other group. Does that sound to you like people who follow Christ? So, the skeptics who saw the man that was born blind walking without a lead dog or a cane was taken to the church board because he was healed. They stated that this man claimed he was healed, but we don't believe that God works that way. We don't believe God performs such miracles. See if you can get him to tell the truth. Well, the Pharisees decided they needed to get to the bottom of it. After repeating the question so many times, they asked him, how is it that he was healed? Who did the healing? Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus could not be from God, for he's working on the Sabbath day. God, I don't know that God makes an exception for performing good works on the Sabbath day. But there are those who think that he does. And others said, how could an ordinary sinner do such a miraculous sign? Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion of him who healed you? The man replied, I think he's a prophet. The leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind. They said, you couldn't have been born blind. So they went and called his parents. Is this your son, they say? Was he born blind? No. To which they replied, he's of age. Ask him for yourself. I thought that was a very good answer. He's old enough. Ask him. Because they had decided anyone who confessed that Jesus was the Messiah would be thrown out of the church. So the second time they called the man in, and they said, give God the glory, because we know that this man Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind, but now I can see. There are two other healings that I want to bring to your attention before we close. Healings of the supernatural. Now, healings manifested before religious people who denied the validity. Matthew, Mark, and Luke records that of a leper who in Jesus' day was treated just as we would treat people with AIDS today. They deserve it, they say. Surely God is punishing him because he must have done something awful. But you know, the leper came through the crowd, walked straight up to Jesus, and said to him, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. The interesting thing about that was, as the leper moved through the crowd, they all drew back. And they watched in horror as Jesus reached out his hand to touch a man who had rotten flesh. Then Jesus reached out and touched him and said, I am willing, be made clean. One touch from the Master's hand was all that he asked, and peace was restored in his life. You know, Jesus never met a disease that he could not cure. He never met a birth defect that he could not reverse or a demon that he could not cast out. But he did meet skeptics that he could not convince. And there are sinners that he could not convert. He had no problems restoring physical sight to the blind, but he had difficulty restoring spiritual sight to those who refused to see. John also records the story of the raising of Lazarus. This is my last miracle. And I can't understand why Jesus delayed when he knew that Lazarus would die. Like Martha, I would ask the question, why did he not come? Did he not care about Lazarus and his family? He must have, because Lazarus is described as one whom Jesus loved. And yet, Jesus delayed. And finally, he made his way towards Bethany, moving slowly and deliberately. During this time, Lazarus died, and his family grieved. And he said to his disciples, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you might believe. But I'm going that I will awaken. So here's the reason that Lazarus was allowed to die, so that Jesus' disciples might believe, so that their faith might be strengthened, so that any doubts that they have about who Jesus was might be removed. And when Jesus arrived, Martha, in her grief, confronted him. If you had been here, she said, my brother would not have died. If you had come when we sent for you, he would still be alive today. It's your fault that my brother is dead. So Martha cried. And then Mary, who also cried, echoed the same sentiments of Martha. And as they all cried, the scripture recorded that Jesus cried along with them. You see, Jesus was about to perform the greatest miracle in restoring life, and yet he saw how overwhelmed by grief Martha and Mary were. He knew how they felt. He knew of their loss. He knew of their pain, and so he grieved alongside them. It was hard for Martha or anyone else to comprehend that Jesus, the life giver, in the face of death, would cry. But Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he dies, yet he shall live. And anyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. And then he looked at her and he said, do you believe this, Martha? And she said, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. So the story of Lazarus, when seen in full circle, only a snapshot of the future, only a compressed view of what the entire planet should be like. All of us live our lives out, and in between the interval, there seems to be chaos and confusion. Between Lazarus' death and Lazarus' reappearance from the resurrection, such a time may be temporary and may pale in insignificance, but when compared to the glorious future that awaits us. But right now, it is all that you and I know. And that is enough to bring tears to the eyes of Jesus. The resurrection of one man, Lazarus, did not solve the dilemma of this earth. For that, it would take one man's death. For that, it would take the life of God himself. So, miracles are just what they are. They are signs. When John the Baptist sent Jesus reports, he wanted to know, who are you? Are you really who you claim to be? Then Jesus replied back, go back and tell John what you have seen and heard. Later on, John lost his head. But John probably understood better than you and I, because one would think that with someone like John, that God would have worked a miracle, and it didn't happen. Here's what John said. He must increase, and I must decrease. So obviously he understood his mission. And yet Jesus stated that his mission on earth was that of liberation. The Spirit of the Lord, he says, is upon me, because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He had sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Notice to whom the message came. Not the chosen of this world. They didn't need liberation. It's the poor, the lame, the leper, the blind, and the deaf, and the deaf. They experienced liberation. Some experienced liberation while Jesus walked the streets of Galilee. Others experienced liberation through Jesus' followers. But John the Baptist never experienced the liberation. Why then miracles? Did they make a difference? They sure did. Did they solve the world's problem? No, they did not. For in Jesus' day, only a few were raised from the dead. Only a few lepers were cleansed. Only a few paralyzed people were healed. That is not why Jesus came. We must know that throughout Jesus' ministry, he used his supernatural powers to set right what was wrong. It was his nature to counteract the effects of a fallen world while he was here on earth. So, every physical healing points us back to a time in Eden when physical eyes did not go blind. Physical bodies did not get crippled, didn't waste away by cancer, or didn't bleed non-stop for 12 years. They pointed forward to a time of recreation. The miracles that Jesus performed gives us a glimpse of what this world was meant to be, and that one day God would make all things right. We must never succumb to the idea that God has given up on mankind. God is no more satisfied with the way things are on this earth than we are. Jesus' miracles provided us with just a snapshot of what God intends to do about it. Bow our heads in prayer. Father, thank you that you manifest yourself to let us know that you are in control. And that when our lives seem to be out of shape, when all of the roadblocks seem to be there to prevent us, Lord, from moving forward, when all chaos seems to be around us and we don't know where to turn, that we may trust you, that we may believe in you, and we'll know that through you we will have deliverance. Help us, Lord, not to lose that faith. Help us to continue to trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.